Hey guys, tonight we're crawling under moth-eaten tapestries to uncover why entire Tudor families bedded down like stacked firewood. Picture this: you're squeezed between a snoozing blacksmith and your mother-in-law on a straw mattress that's hosted 3 generations of farts. Spoiler alert, you'll spend half this trip wondering how anyone slept through the symphony of snores. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and current time. Let's see how our sleepless tribe spans the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not stepping into some cozy communal slumber party. Medieval peasants didn't huddle for warmth out of affection. Beds cost more than a year's wages. Timber frames, worth their weight in salt. Feather mattresses, a luxury traded border to border like spices. Whole villages pooled resources to craft a single bed, often just planks balanced on sawhorses. Sleeping alone wasn't lonely. It was lunacy. Why freeze so low when 4 bodies could turn a drafty loft into a sweat lodge? Here's the kicker: trust mattered more than bloodlines. Strangers boarding at your homestead expected a bed nook between your kids and livestock. Refusing meant risking your reputation as a decent Christian. One 14th century ledger lists 15 travelers, plus a friar and his donkey, crashing a Surrey farmer's bedroom after a bridal feast. Historians still argue whether bed-sharing rituals strengthened communities or just spread fleas faster. Let's debunk the Dark Ages myth. This wasn't primitive chaos. Every inch had rules. Elders claimed the center safest from rats and drafts. Children wedged near the wall as human insulation. Unlucky newlyweds might score a corner until grandma demanded her arthritis spot back. Forget sleep schedules. When the head housemaid yawned, everyone hit the hay. Bedtime rebellion meant a boot to the ribs and a lecture about gratitude. Now for a fun nugget. Some lords required guests to sign bed contracts, promising not to urinate, sword fight, or recite poetry after curfew. Break the rules. You'd owe the host a new goose-down pillow. Imagine drafting that legal clause while squeezed between a snoring minstrel and a squire who forgot his onions. In villages where walls were thinner than parchment, bedtime became a public ritual, neighbors literally sleeping on each other's problems. A cough 3 houses over triggered a chain reaction of grumbles. Births, deaths, marital spats, all conducted in a fog of collective exhaustion. You're not just sharing linens, you're borrowing body heat from Great Uncle Harold's gangrenous foot. But here's what textbooks omit. The bed itself was a battlefield. Mattresses devolved into flea cities by spring. Straw poked through sheets like nature's acupuncture. Ever tried flipping a 500-pound feather mattress with 6 people still on it? Tudor cardio at its finest. And let's not romanticize the smells. Imagine wet dog, fermented cheese, and a hint of rotting rushes. Survival hinged on inventive compromises. Can't afford bed curtains. Hang old tunics to block drafts. Feet freezing. Plop a drowsy chicken under the covers. Some households bedded their sheep indoors, woolly space heaters doubling as alarm clocks. You'd wake to a face full of lanolin and a ewe nibbling your hairpin. Critics called it backward. Why not build more bedrooms? But communal sleep wasn't just frugal, it was a social glue. News traveled faster in shared beds than royal couriers. Grain prices, gossip, rebel uprisings, all dissected between yawns. Ever tried keeping secrets with 7 cousins eavesdropping? Exactly. Privacy died when the candles did, so next time you flop onto your memory foam throne, spare a thought for the Tudors. Their beds weren't just furniture, they were living networks, humming with coughs, confessions, and the occasional rogue fart. Maybe they knew something we don't. Maybe cold toes and crowded sheets reminded them. No one truly rests alone. You shiver beneath moth-chewed woolens, the kind of cold that slips through stone walls like ghostly fingers. Tudor winters don't play nice. Imagine your breath frosting before it leaves your lips, every exhale a tiny cloud of desperation. Privacy, a luxury for sunnier seasons and richer folk. That straw-stuffed mattress beneath you holds 6 bodies tonight. Your sister's icy toes burrow into your calf. A visiting merchant snores into your ear, his beard smelling of stale beer and onions. You endure it because hypothermia's uglier than awkwardness. Main house halls loomed taller than modern rooms, those high ceilings letting warmth rise uselessly toward rafters. Stone floors leach heat like greedy parasites. Historians confirm households burned 1/3 of their income on firewood, yet still, bedmates beat blankets. Here's the kicker, they drafted contracts for this. Signed, Bedship, agreements bound neighbors to share sleep spaces during frosts. Forget romance. This was thermal economics. A widow's warm shoulder might pay next season's grain debt. Ever heard of cheek measurements? Some parishes kept records of bed widths, assuring no one took more than 6 handspans of pillow. Try policing that at midnight when Uncle John sprawls like a starfish. The truly rich sneered at such scrambles. Henry VII's courtiers boasted bed curtains lined with wolf pelts, though skeptics whisper the furs often harbored more fleas than warmth. Peasants, meanwhile, perfected the art of strategic spooning. Children wedged between adults like living hot water bottles. Let's address the elephant, or rather the lack of underwear. Nightshirts reached ankles, but covered nothing beneath. Modesty, a daylight concern. Frostbite cares not for propriety when toes blacken. Don't picture some chaste arrangement. Diaries grumble about knee battle squabbles and accidental gropings. One farmer's will even specifies his wife must continue sharing their bed with her new husband, lest January steal her as death stole me. Warmth hierarchies emerged. Strongest fire tenders claimed bed middles. The frail and elderly became human radiators, pampered with extra rations to stoke their inner furnaces. Servants clung to edges, both shield and sacrifice, against creeping drafts. Oddest of all bedmates weren't always human. Kitchen turnspit dogs sometimes graduated to foot warmers. Though whether their fleas or loyalty proved more annoying, history remains silent. Medical texts warned against solitary repose, believing loneliness invited noxious vapors. Better to endure a stranger's cough than risk melancholy's chill grasp. Monks took vows to sleep in common dorms, fearing isolation's spiritual dangers as much as physical ones. Yet, not everyone embraced the cuddle puddle. Inventories reveal secret privacy screens, woven reeds placed between spouses in wealthy homes. Whether these blocked cold or just eye contact, well, historians still argue whether modesty mattered more to the elite or their chroniclers. Mourning brought relief and reckoning. Stiff limbs unstick from sweat-glued linens. The merchant departs with a nod, both pretending not to recall his midnight whimpers for mother. You count surviving toes, all present, and vow to marry someone shaped like a furnace. Tudor knights taught brutal math, skin-to-skin ratios trumping dignity every time. Next time you complain about a partner's cold feet, remember, our ancestors would have traded kingdoms for electric blankets, or at least fewer in-laws in the bedding. The fire sputters out. Moonlight slices through shutters, silvering the jumble of limbs. Someone farts in their sleep, a flabby trumpet salute to survival. You close your eyes, smiling despite it all. Against the elements, against history itself, you've stolen one more dawn. You wake to a boot in your face, your bedfellow being the third housemaid's cousin twice removed. Welcome to Tudor sleeping arrangements, where bloodlines meant less than backbone warmth. That merchant from last night, already evicted to the floor, his onion breath demotion complete. Nobility always claimed the bed's center, a thermal throne guarded by lesser bodies. Even kids ranked higher than servants, their small frames acting as live bolsters against drafts. The scullery maid, she hugs the footboard, her nose inches from her mistress's unwashed toes. Here's the grim calculus, bed position signaled worth. Fresh rushes beneath the lord's pillow, mildewed ones under the squire. Records show bishops demanded written guarantees of central birthing during visitations. One even cursed a host who offered him edge space. The family's chickens stopped laying for a year. Ever heard of pillow diplomacy? Marriage contracts specified which spouse got the wall side, a buffer against midnight chamberpot dashes. Widows leveraged bed real estate in inheritance disputes, threatening to brawl over featherbed territories. Those ornate bed curtains weren't just for show, they marked sovereign borders. Draw them shut, instant nobility. Leave them open, you're just another pleb in the pile. Servants assigned to curtsy corners faced bed frames carved with family crests, a nightly reminder of their place. Favored retainers earned spots near the warming pan, its glowing coals a status symbol. But woe to whoever forgot to empty it. Last year's ash still smolders in the steward's burned breeches. Oddest rule, some households banned left sides sleeping, believing it strained the liver. A baker's diary complains of being forced supine like a corpse. To please his superstitious landlord, others whispered that masters took corner spots deliberately to monitor servant chatter through cracked eyelids. The true power move, controlling the bed ropes. Mattresses sagged on a lattice of hemp, tightening them required dirty elbows. Historians still argue whether this task fell to junior staff or scheming matrons securing better lumbar support. Either way, squeaky ropes sparked midnight fistfights over tautness rights. Clergy faced unique dilemmas. Celibacy vows clashed with mandatory bed sharing. Clever friars invented modesty logs, rolled up blankets placed between bodies. One bishop's tombstone reportedly reads, "Here lies Edmund. He never touched a thigh willingly." Servants rebelled in sly ways. Stable boys accidentally dripped tallow on fine sheets, earning banishment to comparatively private haylofts. A lady's maid faked sleepwalking for weeks, just to claim a central spot during her nocturnal wanderings. Gender played cruel tricks. Maids fresh from the fields faced lordly groping, but only if their breath smelled of mint. Garlic eaters got immunity via stench. Betrothed couples slept back to back, chaperoned by grannies who snorted like hounds at any rustle. Morning reshuffled the deck. The blacksmith's son, nobodies after sunset, strutted at dawn, having shared a bolster with the earl. Meanwhile, the treasurer's wife scrubbed goose fat from her shift, her velvet-clad bedmate having accidentally rolled in supper drippings. You nudge the stable hand off your arm, his drool puddling on your never-washed hose. Through bleary eyes, you note the hierarchy bodies radiating outward from the linen-clad landowner like spokes on a rank wheel. That's Tudor social mobility, measured in pillow inches and farts per capita. The bell tolls for breakfast. You peel yourself from the human knot, leaving indentations in the straw. Tonight's reshuffle might promote you closer to the fire, unless someone births twins or learns Latin. Until then, you'll dream of four-poster beds and maybe a few less cousins. The carved posts looming above you aren't just wood, they're a lumbering sermon. Each vine curling up the bed frame whispers, "We could feed 3 villages, but prefer gilding our footboard instead." Silk drapes pool like liquid silver, so thick they muffle the steward's snoring, but not his debts. Thread count becomes battlefield math here. Your cheek grazes linen, so finely woven it's nearly transparent. A stark contrast to the burlap sacks servants stuff with hay downstairs. Records show one noblewoman's will stipulated her sheets be burned upon death, lest lesser hands defile their purity. Historians found singed remnants in an Essex chimney. alongside love letters to the stable master. Feathers matter more than morals. Wealthy households flaunt goose-down mattresses, so plump they require ladders. Yet the undercook still eats pigeon. Rumor claims lords insisted pigeon feathers emitted humility vapors. You glimpse a maid plucking ducks in the yard, her calloused fingers sorting breast fluff from wing. The downier stuff floats upstairs, the rest pads the baby's cradle. If the dogs don't steal it first, that absurdly oversized bed you've heard tales of. The great bed of Ware isn't a myth. It's a 16-person propaganda piece. Carved with nymphs and griffins, its posts scrape ceilings, while its owners scrape together dowries. Visitors chip off splinters as souvenirs, leaving the monstrosity pockmarked like a pox survivor. Fabric dyes signal power in the dark. Royal beds drip with kermes red, a color wrung from crushed beetles. Each curtain panel costs more than the farmer outside spends on seed. Spot a emerald green tester. That's malachite pigment, toxic to touch, but priceless to display. A duke's son once died, sneezing azure dye, leaving his heirs scrambling to reupholster with a less lethal blues. Status oozes from bed-warming rituals. The lady of the house employs a silver pan. Her scullery cousin makes do with a brick wrapped in rags. Watch the butler cradle heated stones like a newborn one faltered step. And that's a month's wages up in smoke. Ever seen a mattress fight? Straw ticks become weapons during inheritance feuds. A bishop's diary describes siblings whacking each other with bolsters. Until feathers choked the air, he blesses the scene as pious redistribution. Some households stitched jewels into bedding seams, a risky investment given the chambermaid's nimble fingers. The true flex, commissioning a bed that outlives you. Four-poster frames get passed down like crowns, their woodworm holes patched with wax and lies. One lord's epitaph brags he slept cradled by ancestors, though they likely just reused his great uncle's headboard. Watch guests accidentally spill wine on sumptuous spreads, testing if stains provoke outrage or indifference. A pristine counterpane means the host can afford replacements. A blemished one suggests they're clinging to former glory. That moth-eaten velvet, it's either vintage or very telling. Heraldry gets aggressive here. Family crests aren't just carved, they're branded onto bed wheels, embroidered into pillowcases, even baked into communion wafers served at bedside. A visiting ambassador once choked on a pastry, emblazoned with his host's coat of arms, diplomatic incident or digestion miracle. Peek under the mattress. Some nobles stash land deeds between the ropes, security through obscurity. A clever heir once sewed a will into a quilt right before his aunt accidentally donated it to plague victims. Irony stains the sheets. Those same lords who preach modesty install mirrors on bed canopies, a cheeky way to watch servants undress. Yet the bishop's bed nearby features a crucified Jesus scowling downward, because nothing says holy rest like judgmental carpentry. Inventive thievery thrives. Goldsmiths weld tiny chains to candlesticks, only to find them clipped by a guest's teeth. There's talk of a dowry bed with hollow posts for hiding jewels, and a builder who forgot to mention the secret compartment. Feast days bring competitive bed displays. Families prop doors open so passers-by gawk at damask drapes. Poorer relations stage illness to explain their closed shutters. One yeoman's wife dyed her sheets with beetroot, fooling no one except maybe the goats. Watch the housekeeper measure bed angles with a protractor, ensuring the lord's view through the door impresses visitors. Perfection has its price. A page boy once spent 3 hours adjusting pillows, then got whipped for wrinkling the coverlet. The ultimate power move. Commissioning a bed wider than your neighbor's moat. Never mind the rooms, only 9 feet across dominance isn't about practicality. You'll notice the carpenter sawing through an adjoining wall, and the priest adding vanity to next Sunday's sermon topics. Beneath all this pomp, rust creeps in. That stag-carved headboard. Its antlers make excellent hangers for damp socks. The countess's lace canopy, mouse-nibbled and patched with horsehair. Even silk rots, leaving heirs to sleep on the faded ghosts of their ancestors' egos. You brush a hand across the bedpost, your palm catching on a groove. Squinting, you spot faint initials. TH loves MB beneath layers of varnish. For all the posturing, even status symbols can't hide clumsy teenage carvings. Outside, dawn pokes through the drapes. Another day of proving worth through wool quality and strategic snoring. The sun dips below the thatched eaves, your cue to join the candle patrol. Children race with snuffers, wicks hissing into darkness. Each flame's death thickens the smell of pooled tallow. Servants stack warming pans by the hearth, their copper bellies glowing like demonic pumpkins. You learn the bed hierarchy by who claims the chamber pot first. The head of household gets midnight privacy if 3 seconds counts as privacy, while others fumble in the coal-scented dark. Records show 12 people once shared a Hertfordshire bed. They labeled the pot the democratic vessel. Someone's always nursing a shin bruise from tripping over it. Watch the steward pour ale into hollowed-out bedposts, a makeshift canteen for parched throats at 3 a.m. Not all liquids stay contained. A diarist describes waking to a warm downpour after a cousin overindulged in spiced wine. Inventive souls cradle pots while lying down, a skill requiring core strength and indifference to splashes. Bedtime modesty's a dance of collapsing layers. You shimmy out of hose under covers, flannel shirts doubling as privacy tents for the bashful. Moonlight betrays all. One lady-in-waiting's journal complains of Sir Walter's knees glowing like pale turnips through her nightgown. Snuffing the last candle triggers the blanket wars. Elbows jab for woolen territory. A servant's frostbitten toe becomes your lower back's unwelcome companion. Rustling hay ticks mask stealthy flatulence. but not the giggling. Historians still argue whether shared beds bred tolerance or just suppressed rage until dawn. The chamber pot's last user faces a dubious honor. You're handed the lukewarm vessel, its contents sloshing as you navigate floor ruts. Nobles stash lavender sprigs inside to mask odors, which mostly creates the scent of rotting flowers. A Essex vicar once preached against vanitous pot perfuming. His congregation nodded along, then bought rose petals at market. Midnight thirst torments the polite. Reach for that bedpost ale, and you'll wake 6 people with creaking wood, stay parched, and endure a tongue like cured leather. Clever maids stash raisin clusters under pillows, if the mice haven't bartered them away first. Foreign guests fare worst. A Spanish envoy's letters moan about English beds' lack of basic dignity. His valet caught the house cat drinking from his lordship's pot. You learn to identify snores, the cook's adenoidal wheeze, the milkmaid's harmonizing grunts, the blacksmith's window-rattling blasts. Drafts turn sheets into sails. Every stolen blanket sparks chain reactions. Accidental limb tangling, vengeful toenails, the inevitable whispered threat about sleeping in the pigsty. Yet shivering bodies converge like mercury, separating and merging through the night's chill. Dawn creeps in with coughs and groans, the chamber pot's crusted rim glinting in first light. You count toes to confirm no one got kicked out of bed, only to spot the brewer's apprentice snoring under the trundle. His stocking cap ribbons trails into the pot, a fitting end to another collective night. Strangers arrive at dusk, mud-caked and reeking of wet wool. Their presence proof your hosts can afford mercy. Beds expand like stretched dough. You'll spoon a fur trader tonight and smell his dinner for weeks. Hospitality laws required shelter for travelers, though none specified how many courtesies died at the chamber pot's edge. Watch the lady of the house beam, her smile tight as she offers the best straw pillow to a cloth merchant. Status shines through suffering guests' mean influence. Also Fleas, a 1573 inventory lists bed mites as household pests right between rats and disrespectful kin. Foreign dignitaries get center berths, their elbows claiming territory like conquering kings. Dutch envoys complained of English sleep hovels, where ambassadors snored into earls' ears, and worse. One Florentine merchant's diary recalls a baron's wife kicking him for agitato breathing, her foot finding his ribs through 3 layers of quilts. Midnight diplomacy happens bladder to bladder. You lie still, listening to a Scottish trader's kidneys negotiate with last night's ale. Shared beds blur boundaries. A French envoy's stolen stockings turn up on the blacksmith's feet at dawn. Historians uncovered a Chinese letter S letter, griping about a guest who sang hymns to Satan between snores, though whether this meant prayers or flatulence remains unclarified. Breakfast brings strained compliments. Your host boasts of the bed's downy softness, ignoring the goose feather poking your thigh since moonrise. Guests reciprocate with flattery about remarkable bed width, while hiding purloined spoons in their sleeves. A cheeky servant might accidentally spill honey on a lingering guest's saddle, hinting it's time to depart. The worst offenders overstay their lice, colonizing mattresses like squatters. Church records show a tinker who lodged 9 weeks, his snoring blamed for a dairy maid's stillborn child. Hosts resort to coded insults. "Shall we prepare your horse?" really means, "Leave before I burn the bed." Morning reveals the toll. You find a bishop's ring wedged in your armpit, the ruby glinting like a badge of survival. Sheets bear the ghosts of strangers, wine stains shaped like Flanders, sweat maps of Saxony, a suspiciously beard-shaped gravy blot. Servants whisper that Countess Marlowe once hosted a duke so vile she burned the mattress and called it sweet sacrifice. Yet still they come, travelers craving warmth, hosts craving status. You'll dream of private chambers someday, maybe even your own pot. Until then, scoot left. The fur dealer's hip bone needs more room. Your lungs seize at dawn's first breath, the musk of 19 sleepers hanging thick as wool curtains. Tudor physicians warned solitary sleepers choked on night vapors, evil humors seeping through cracks in lonely chambers. Better to inhale Uncle John's onion breath than let wandering airs curdle your blood. Or so said Dr. Bullen's 1592 treatise The Perils of Empty Beds. You're spooning a miller's apprentice when the matron yanks open shutters, sunlight exposing a nest of tangled limbs. Fresh air's the real villain. Here healers believed night breezes carried plague miasmas, and worse, a popular rhyme advised. Windows shut, air candles snuff, souls adrift catch death's rough cuff. They weren't joking. King Henry's own doctors blamed his ulcers on reckless moonlit strolls through palace gardens. Feel the woman behind you shift, her cold toes brushing your calf. Shared beds meant shared immunity, or so they thought. Village midwives prescribed warmth of 6 for colicky infants, claiming group body heat steamed poisons from fragile lungs. Skeptics, few and quiet. The 1568 outbreak saw entire families dragging mattresses into cow stables, reasoning bovine breath purified air better than any apothecary's herbs. Smell that. Not just sweat, there's rosemary under the straw. Herbal sachets dangled from bedposts to calm malign spirits with mixed results. One eccentric baron slept with a dried toad strapped to his chest, convinced its carcass absorbed nocturnal toxins. His 4th wife filed for divorce, citing unnatural humidities. Hear the priest mutter verses into your neck. Clergy insisted God listened closest in crowded beds. Sinful thoughts diluted among the righteous. A bishop's ledger from 1543 lists penance adjustments: 3 days, fasting, if sinning alone, half day, if witnessed by 5 sleepers. Convenient, if your snoozing cellmates would lie under oath. Now the coughing starts, a chain reaction from chimney corner to door. Physicians argued shared coughs strengthened constitutions, like surviving mild pox doses. You marvel at their logic, turning a rickety assassin's bed into a disease nursery. The Earl of Suffolk's physician prescribed sleeping betwixt twins to cure gout, which explains his clientele's sudden dip in gout and rise in twin births 9 months post-treatment. Toss all night, blame stagnant humors, not the Cooper's kneecap drilling your spine. Apothecaries sold communal tonics, basically ale with extra ginger to align bedmates' essences. Historians still argue whether night air fears caused bed sharing or bed sharing caused night air fears. Either way, you're stuck here till sunrise, counting flea bites, wondering if the carpenter's third sneeze sealed your fate. Dawn's honeyed light reveals a child's hand in your hair, sticky with plum jam, and a vital truth. Tudor beds weren't about comfort, but survival. Your cohorts rise, scratching and blaspheming, yet somehow still breathing. July's heat clings to your skin like a jealous lover. The straw mattress beneath you, now a fermenting nest of damp wool and resentment. Tudor summers turned shared beds into warfare. Elbows become weapons. Bare thighs sticking like treacle. You've abandoned the feather tick entirely, sleeping diagonally across floorboards, while your sister's husband hogs the bed's last cool corner. Upper-class ladies dangled lavender sachets between sleepers there, sweet wardens against night stench. Records show the Countess of Pembroke ordered 16 pounds of dried petals monthly, though her household roster lists only 4 shared beds. Historians still argue whether this proves extravagance or concealed bed-hopping rebels. Winters flip the script. December's frost edds, ice flowers on the shutter cracks, your breath visible even indoors. Now you'll spoon Satan's grandma if she radiates warmth. Families piled pelts until mattresses resembled bare carcasses. A 1578 inventory lists 3 wolfskins, 2 badger, 1 unidentified sticky. The unidentified pelt becomes your problem, its greasy flank pressed against your cheekbone. Farmers swore by wet sheepskin insulation, sleeping under freshly sheared fleeces doused in well water. The squelch kept couples awake, but hey, hypothermia's quieter. One Yorkshire widow insisted the method cured her son's stammer, claiming the stench shocked his tongue loose. Court documents show she later sued a wool merchant for excessively effective hydration. Hear the wind howl through daub and wattle walls. That's your cue to forgive Cousin Edgar's habit of grinding his teeth. Survival trumps petty grudges when your toes go numb. Nobles bribed servants with extra rations to act as bed warmers, human foot warmers dozing in shifts. A bishop's 1612 diary gripes about hiring a particularly toasty blacksmith for Advent. Summer's chaotic freedom birthed rebellion. Teens fled to haylofts. Elders turned blind eyes to these straw divorces. Watch the miller's daughter roll her eyes As her mother insists, humidity strengthens virtue. By August, even loyal wives invented errands requiring overnight barn inspections. Winter restores order. Frost is the great peacemaker, forcing feuding neighbors into truces under moth-eaten furs. Note the fur trader's sudden popularity come October. His secret: storing pelts in cedar chests with mint sprigs, creating a scent one poet dubbed the aroma of forced civility. Some clever souls tried modular bedding, removable layers peeled off as temperatures climbed. Few remembered where they'd tossed the woolen strata come autumn. You'll spend Michaelmas Eve hunting for winter quilts in the nettle patch, right where your drunk uncle swore he'd buried summer's oppression. Children became tactical assets, their body heat concentrated like little furnaces. Parents orchestrated sleeping arrangements like military campaigns. Jenkin by the feet, Marjorie at the left flank. Except Marjorie's got fleas again. Towns near forests had it best. Woodcutters hoarded pine resin to smear on bed ropes. When warmed by sleepers, the scent mimicked expensive incense. Your aunt calls it the smell of poverty trying its best. You call it better than Uncle Oswin's feet. Hear the rooster. Too late dawn cracks and the bed ice thaws. Winter's alliance dissolves with the frost your sister-in-law accidentally knees you while rising. But come next blizzard, you'll cling to each other again, cursing, sweating, alive. Your cheek presses against cold plaster, the wall's uneven surface imprinting itself like a brutal love letter. Tudor homes weren't designed for privacy. They were survival pods. Picture a dollhouse flipped upside down, sleeping lofts crammed beneath sloped ceilings, ground floors reeking of damp rushes and yesterday's fish stew. No hallways, no closets, just one room bleeding into another. Every whispered secret heard through paper-thin wattle walls. That bedroom you're imagining doesn't exist. Floors collapse vertically. Kitchen heat rises through floorboards to warm the sleepers above. You're basically a human plug in a drafty socket. Historians confirm over 80% of Midland's homes skipped staircases. Entirely, residents climbed ladders to reach mattress-strewn attics. 1592 probate inventory lists. A betta, a butter churn 3 live chickens, all sharing the same 8-foot square loft. The chickens wake you at dawn, pecking crumbs from your hair. Wealthier families built cupboards into bed frames, not for storage, for literal cups. A hidden ledge above the headboard held nighttime ale sips. You'll learn to drink sideways unless you enjoy elbowing 6 relatives while reaching for hydration, the real nightmare. Forgetting which cousin's bed hides the chamber pot. Some builders cut breathing holes in ceiling beams, tiny gaps claimed to ventilate miasmas. All they do is funnel snores between floors. You're drifting off when the blacksmith's nasally drone drips through the holes. A sound one poet compared to Satan sharpening his cutlery. Blame the 1574 building codes, their thickness requirements for exterior walls, forced interiors to shrink. Your neighbor's cough might as well be your own. Here's a fun twist. Tudor zoning laws taxed rooms with multiple floors. The workaround: build jettying upper stories, jutting over streets like wooden mushrooms. Your bed now hangs 3 feet above the butcher's stall. Enjoy the lullaby of cleavers at dawn. Carpenters inserted false beams to trick inspectors. Hollow timbers hiding sleeping nooks. You're basically inside a child's puzzle box if the puzzle was how to endure someone's knee in your back. Ever seen a cruel screen, the decorative panel placed between sleepers? It's a carved plank pretending to offer privacy. Your sister's suitor whispers sweet nothings through the tulip motifs. You're debating whether to play deaf or intervene. The screens warp over time, their once sturdy oak now bowing like old drunks. Yours developed a splintered hole last winter, perfectly aligned with Uncle Jasper's left nostril. Hear those faint scratches in the walls. Everyone blames rats, until the shoemaker's daughter found a love note tucked between the laths. Turns out the walls are hollow mail slots, teenagers exploiting gaps in the plaster to pass gossip. Your home breathes, wheezes, and now sexts. Farmhouses flirted with innovation. Some had beds on pulleys hoisted to the ceiling by day. Sounds brilliant until the rope frays mid-meal. A Gloucestershire farmer's will mentions leaving his son, the bed, and the scar where it fell. No wonder ground floor straw piles stayed popular. Chimneys were luxury items. Most roofs just had smoke holes. You're not sleeping, you're being slow smoked like a herring. The upside: everything tastes faintly of oakum. Downside: your best hat now doubles as a colander for ash. Historians still argue whether these cramped conditions increased familial bonds or homicide rates. Court rolls show seasonal spikes in mattress-related grievances. Each January, a Norwich butcher once sued his wife for allocating bed inches by social rank, favoring the dog. The poorest squeezed into Barry beds, coffin-shaped niches carved into stone walls. You'd think the claustrophobia helps with warmth, until your breath frosts the granite 6 inches from your face. Wealthier merchants installed squint windows, arrow-slit thin glass panes, offering views of more wattle walls. Why bother? Status. Just knowing you could waste space on a pointless window meant everything. Worst offenders: clergy housing. Rectories packed visiting friars into alcoves beneath baptismal fonts. Imagine trying to sleep while the vicar practices Easter sermons above your head is fiery. Hosannas vibrating through the floorboards. One friar's journal complains the experience invigorated neither soul nor spine. Damp gnaws your toes first, rising from the earthen floor despite the reed mats. You've memorized every leak's rhythm. The drip above the storage chest plays a jaunty galliard. 3 children share a trundle bed that rolls under the main frame by day. Assuming they remember to rise before father unfolds the table. Spoiler, they don't. Centuries later, Archaeologists will find hazelnut shells wedged in floor cracks, carved initials on loft beams, fingernail scratches counting sleepless nights. But tonight, you're just trying to ignore the baker's wife snoring through the party wall, a sound like a bear choking on a harmonica. You press your face into the one unstained pillow corner and dream of empty attics. You clutch threadbare sheets that smell of mutton tallow, a far cry from French silk. Across the channel, Versailles nobles sprawl in satin-draped solitude, while your kneecaps dig into Aunt Marjorie's spine. France's obsession with private sleep began as power theater. Louis XIV's 83-foot bedchamber, designed so courtiers could watch his lever ritual. Meanwhile, your household competes for mattress real estate like herring in a barrel. Parisian attics hid pulley beds hoisted to ceilings by day bourgeois families dining where they'd later snore. A 1671 ledger lists 1 feather bed, 2 pulley ropes, and a physician's note against vertigo. You'd kill for that vertical space. Instead, you're rationing elbow room between a sniffling cousin and the wet nurse's sourdough starter. The French called shared beds lits de misère, beds of misery. Rich English travelers mocked this term, while their own servants slept 6 to a pallet. One Venetian ambassador wrote home bewildered, "Why did London's wealthiest couples host banquets in their bedchambers?" Status flex. Your host's carved four-poster isn't for sleeping. It's a throne for receiving envious guests. Here's the kicker. French palaces had separate rooms for undressing. You change under a woolen cloak held up by siblings, if you're lucky. Versailles Hall of Mirrors reflected powdered wigs. Your cracked bedside mirror reflects Uncle Thomas picking his toes. Some Parisian hotels offered modesty screens, flimsy partitions that toppled if you sneezed. A 1638 police report details 3 deaths by collapsing screens, crushed beneath cherub carvings mid-snore. You'd take that over your family solution, assigning each sleeper a designated cough direction. Historians still argue whether Tudors knew about French solo sleep or cared. Evidence hides in trade manifests. English wool merchants imported fewer bed curtains than French lace dealers. Maybe your ancestors preferred communal warmth, or just hated carpenters. Wealthy Frenchwomen used velouses, nighttime caps with oilcloth linings to protect wigs. You tie a rag around your head to block out the coopers hammering next door. Marie Antoinette's insomnia mask had sapphire eyepieces. Yours has bacon grease stains from Tuesday's breakfast. French physicians blamed solo sleep for melancholic humors, prescribing shared beds as cure-alls. Your own doctor insists pile-ups prevent brain vapors. Neither nation admits the truth their beds stink, and company distracts from the smell. Ever seen a French Rule? Alcoves beside beds for private chats. Your version, whispering through the hole in the wall to the cobbler's apprentice. He's teaching you curse words in Occitan, the closest you'll get to continental sophistication. Parisian inns segregated guests by class. A duke never spooned a blacksmith. Your village's soul, tavern crams everyone into the fleecer's nest, a mattress platform above the taproom. Enjoy the beer drips and drunkards. Ballads. The innkeeper calls it atmosphere. You call it athlete's foot with a soundtrack. Some clever French monks invented folding beds, luxury collapsibles for traveling salesmen. You unroll a hay-stuffed pallet over the chicken coop. Medieval subletting 101. Poultry gets the day shift. You get the night. The ultimate irony. French royals imported English nightshirts, admired their dense weave against drafts. Your own linen smock chafes like a burlap sack. But at Versailles, it's haute couture. Before drifting off, consider this centuries later. Parisians will romanticize your crowded Tudor beds as communitarian. They'll sip overpriced tea in replica yeoman cottages. Aching for connection, their velvet drapes suffocated. You smirk into the dark, knowing future fools will pay to experience your sleepless nights. Then Aunt Marjorie farts, and you reevaluate. The air thickens. Aunt Marjorie's fourth bean stew of the week claims another victim. You fumble for the privacy curtain, a moth-eaten sheet emblazoned with embroidered psalms. It sags between bedposts, blocking precisely nothing. Wealthy households used Flemish tapestries as bed screens, until moths reduced holy martyrs to lace. Your cousin swears nettle tea sprayed on fabric repels pests. It definitely repels sleep. 16th century probate records reveal bed alleys, narrow walkways between shared mattresses. Yours is a foot-wide gap, patrolled by father's snores. Some families hung parchment strips dipped in wax and lavender, crude sound buffers that melted onto sheets. A 1593 housekeeping manual recommends stuffing ears with rose petals. You try wool scraps, which cousin End steals to darn his hose. Historians still argue whether canopy beds offered true privacy or just gave Tudors plausible deniability. Your sister's betrothal contract specifies a curtain of 2 layers between her and the groom's family. The weaver delivered gauze thin enough to read through. Now you witness her future mother-in-law's chin hairs quiver with each snort. Clever wives devised chamber clocks, code phrases to signal marital intimacy. Check the leaks meant, pretend to snore. You've heard Air the Rushes 6 times this week. A jest book from 1611 mocks newlyweds who overused. Mend the fire. Their bed curtains caught aflame mid-ruse. Country folk took inspiration from beekeepers, smoking out bedmates with smoldering herbs. Your aunt waves a rosemary bundle like a sword. It masks some smells. Church alms records show paupers traded goose grease for valerian root, dreamless sleep trumping slick hair. You rub onion juice on your soles tonight. The cobbler swore it prevents foot cramps. Or was it plague? Inventive servants strung fishing nets above beds, catch-alls for falling lice. Your brother rigs a pulley system to hoist his pillow beyond grabby toddlers. The rope snaps at 3 a.m., nearly braining the parson. An Essex carpenter patented bed gardens. In 1588, raised platforms with under mattress herb drawers. Critics noted mice nested in the time. Some claimed strategic blanket tugging could muffle sounds. You yank wool over ears as Uncle Robert recounts his bowel movements. A popular ballad of 1563 praises wives who sew their husbands' lips with thread, metaphorically. You consider it literally. Night witchmen's horns drown out nocturnal noises for those who can afford the bribe. You settle for humming tavern tunes off-key. A London widow's diary brags of deafening the household with psalms to deter errant hands. Her tombstone reads, "Sang herself to rest, the ultimate illusion, pretending not to hear." You master the art of sleep-talking, loudly listing chores during Ent's amorous sighs. A Yorkshire probate court transcript cites strategic deafness as grounds for annulment. The judge ruled the husband's snoring a divine intervention. So you lean into the lie curtains as chaperones, screens as sanctity, deafness as dignity. The bed creaks. Someone steals the last blanket. You stare at a tapestry cherub missing both eyes. Maybe privacy was never about walls, but what we agree not to notice. Candle smoke lingers like jealous spirits. Your nose twitches at the reek of tallow and treason. A baron's daughter once whispered rebellion plots against Elizabeth. I into her maid's ear hear, both pretending to snore. Servant's testimony later hanged 3 conspirators. You strain to hear Marjorie's mutters about the miller's new wife, until Uncle Robert farts the secret into irrelevance. Tudor pillow talk doubled as a postal service, rumors crisscrossing counties faster than royal proclamations. Your sister hisses tonight's dispatch. The blacksmith's son got a townsgirl pregnant. The priest's solution, a virginity test involving leeches and a silver spoon. You doubt the science, but the tale's already burrowing into 10 other ears. By dawn, half the parish will know. Clever lovers traded secrets through bed curtain embroidery. A 1574 inventory describes pillow slips stitched with barley codes, 1 dot for yes, 2 for no. You spot your brother tracing fingers over a lumpy seam. Is it a sweetheart's promise, or where he's hidden the stolen ale? Historians still argue whether these textile ciphers carried real messages or just hopeful fantasies. Wedding night eavesdropping wasn't just prurient, it was contractual. Village bylaws required witnesses to confirm consummation. You've heard the newlywed game got elaborate, bridesmaids hiding behind drapes with tally sticks. One Sussex groom reportedly shouted farm animal prices to thwart listeners. His bride countered by reciting psalms. They remained unwed 3 years, until a priest heard them pant through a Lenten hymn. The real blackmail gold, bedwetting confessions. A Hampshire widow's will bequeathed £20 to anyone who never spoke of Thomas Buckley's damp sheets. The coin bought silence until Tommy became sheriff. Now tavern ballads mock his nightly reign. Your cousin snores, a mercy after his ill-advised turnip broth confession. Nobles weaponized bedtime stories. A duke's diary brags of inventing vampire tailies to scare servants off his mistress. You invent your own monster, the lint wolf, a creature summoned by unbrushed blankets, and kicks you mid-tail, but the scullery boy whimpers. Tomorrow, they'll blame his fear on pickled eel dreams. Midnight indiscretions sparked fatal duels. A 1562 court transcript details a knight who overheard his brother insult his beard and jabbed him with a bed-warming pan. The scar resembled a squashed fig. You bite your tongue as Marjorie mocks your pigeon-toed walk. Revenge comes at sunrise. You accidentally douse her shift with sour milk. Some truths stayed buried. Archivists found an 8-year-old's diary wedged in a bed frame, pages detailing her father's treason scribbled beneath sketches of cats. The ink blurs where tears fell. You press your cheek against a lumpy pillow, wondering what future snoops will make of N's amateurish love poems to the dairymaid. Coded snores carried meanings. 3 gulps and a whistle meant the priest approaches. In one recusant household, your uncle's adenoidal drone hides instructions for tomorrow's fox hunt. Or maybe it's just adenoids. You mimic a wood dove's coo, a signal from last summer's rebellion. But only the hound stirs. Inventive liars exploited the noise. A conman's 1589 trial reveals he'd fake sleepwalking to overhear fake secrets, then sell them as prophecy. You mumble nonsense about buried gold and scribbles notes. Let him dig up the turnip patch at dawn. The ultimate power move. Truth-telling. Lady Margaret Beaufort reportedly began each night listing her enemies' sins like a lullaby. You catalog N's faults: leather stealing, porridge hoarding, chronic elbowing. His smirk says he's doing the same. Dawn creeps in your petty grievances, blurring with Crow's cause. In this bed, as in history, the loudest voice writes the tale, but the sharpest ears survive it. Candle smoke lingers like jealous spirits. Your nose twitches at the reek of tallow and treason. A baron's daughter once whispered rebellion plots against Elizabeth. I into her maid's ear hear, both pretending to snore. Servant's testimony later hanged 3 conspirators. You strain to hear Marjorie's mutters about the miller's new wife, until Uncle Robert farts the secret into irrelevance. Tudor pillow talk doubled as a postal service, rumors crisscrossing counties faster than royal proclamations. Your sister hisses tonight's dispatch. The blacksmith's son got a townsgirl pregnant. The priest's solution, a virginity test involving leeches and a silver spoon. You doubt the science, but the tale's already burrowing into 10 other ears. By dawn, half the parish will know. Clever lovers traded secrets through bed curtain embroidery. A 1574 inventory describes pillow slips stitched with barley codes, 1 dot for yes, 2 for no. You spot your brother tracing fingers over a lumpy seam. Is it a sweetheart's promise? Or where he's hidden the stolen ale? Historians still argue whether these textile ciphers carried real messages or just hopeful fantasies. Wedding night eavesdropping wasn't just prurient, it was contractual. Village bylaws required witnesses to confirm consummation. You've heard the newlywed game got elaborate, bridesmaids hiding behind drapes with tally sticks. One Sussex groom reportedly shouted farm animal prices to thwart listeners. His bride countered by reciting psalms. They remained unwed 3 years, until a priest heard them pant through a Lenten hymn. The real blackmail gold, bedwetting confessions. A Hampshire widow's will bequeathed £20 to anyone who never spoke of Thomas Buckley's damp sheets. The coin bought silence until Tommy became sheriff. Now tavern ballads mock his nightly reign. Your cousin snores, a mercy after his ill-advised turnip broth confession. Nobles weaponized bedtime stories. A duke's diary brags of inventing vampire tailies to scare servants off his mistress. You invent your own monster, the lint wolf, a creature summoned by unbrushed blankets. End kicks you mid-tail, but the scullery boy whimpers. Tomorrow, they'll blame his fear on pickled eel dreams. Midnight indiscretions sparked fatal duels. A 1562 court transcript details a knight who overheard his brother insult his beard and jabbed him with a bed-warming pan. The scar resembled a squashed fig. You bite your tongue as Marjorie mocks your pigeon-toed walk. Revenge comes at sunrise. You accidentally douse her shift with sour milk. Some truths stayed buried. Archivists found an 8-year-old's diary wedged in a bed frame. Pages detailing her father's treason scribbled beneath sketches of cats. The ink blurs where tears fell. You press your cheek against a lumpy pillow, wondering what future snoops will make of N's amateurish love poems to the dairymaid. Coded snores carried meanings. 3 gulps and a whistle meant the priest approaches in one recusant household. Your uncle's adenoidal drone hides instructions for tomorrow's fox hunt. Or maybe it's just adenoids. You mimic a wood dove's coo, a signal from last summer's rebellion. But only the hound stirs. Inventive liars exploited the noise. A conman's 1589 trial reveals he'd fake sleepwalking to overhear fake secrets, then sell them as prophecy. You mumble nonsense about buried gold. End scribbles notes. Let him dig up the turnip patch at dawn. The ultimate power move. Truth-telling. Lady Margaret Beaufort reportedly began each night listing her enemies' sins like a lullaby. You catalog N's faults: leather stealing, porridge hoarding, chronic elbowing. His smirk says he's doing the same. Dawn creeps in, your petty grievances blurring with Crow's cause. In this bed, as in history, the loudest voice writes the tale, but the sharpest ears survive it. You jolt awake, tiny fists pummeling your ribs like a vengeful baker kneading dough. The Baron's newborn wails 2 pallets over, his wet nurse snoring through the din. Noble infants never slept alone. Even future kings breastfed beside groomsmen's armpits. A 1547 household ledger lists paid 3 shillings to Nurse Agnes for enduring Lord Henry's midnight bites. You wonder if they tipped her extra for the teeth marks. An advice manual from the time suggests quieting colic with owl feathers dipped in mead. Though whether the child or nurse drank the concoction remains unclear. Your sister swears by dabbing walnut oil behind the ears. The baby vomits walnuts. Progress. Chaperones claimed they guarded the lineage's purity truthfully. They guarded their own shut-eye. One countess's diary complains of a nursling's kicks. That demon babe hath the legs of a Parisian danseur. The entry ends mid-sentence. Perhaps another tiny foot found her spleen. You've mastered the art of sleeping while sitting upright, a skill more valuable than Latin in these crowded quilts. Last week, a visiting knight mistook your head for a pillow during his ill-fueled nap. You now train your elbows as defensive weapons. Cradle rocks doubled as torture devices. A traveling friar's memoir describes infants strapped into hanging cradles, their endless swaying lulling entire households into nausea. Your cousin's babe prefers midnight serenades, an off-key rendition of Greensleeves screamed into your left ear. The cat now hides in the privy. Historians still argue whether noble families tolerated nocturnal chaos for the child's supposed character building, or because hiring separate nursemaids would dent their silverware budgets. You suspect the third reason: misery loves witnesses. Dawn pries through shutters, the baby finally silent, the chaperones slack-jawed, your elbow permanently dented. Some historians claim this nightly ordeal produced resilient statesmen. You'd argue it produced expert mutes, children wise enough to scream only when the wine runs out. The straw tickles your nose, an over-perfumed ruse to mask the stench of 20 bodies. Someone's betrothed daughter lies 3 inches from you, her chaperone's hand gripping her ankle like a shackle. Court records from 1572 show Sir Edmund Bletchley sued his mother-in-law after she clung to his hose during the wedding night vigil. The marriage lasted 3 months, but the legal precedent outlived them both. You're trapped beside a pair of affianced sweethearts, or rather, a nobleman's third son and the heiress he's tolerating for her cider mills. Their chaperone snores like a blacksmith's bellows, yet still manages to cough pointedly when the groom's pinky strays near the bride's wrist. The Westminster Code of 1521 mandated witnesses sleep between newly betrothed pairs, but forgot to specify they needed consciousness. Inventive lovers exploited gaps in the rules. Marjorie Kemp's diary brags of passing love notes via a trained ferret named Lusty John. The creature's collar bore tiny parchment scrolls and a tendency to bite groins. Tonight, you spot a page boy accidentally tripping his flailing hand, passing a plum to the dairymaid. The fruit's flesh hides a wax-sealed vow. clever, until the juice stains her shift crimson. Public bedding ceremonies weren't just symbolic, they were premarital audits. Parish registers from Norfolk list 7 wedding nullifications due to grooms failing to perform under scrutiny. One panicked lad reportedly shouted, "God's teeth, she's cold as a salmon," before fleeing through a privy chute. You pray tonight's couple fares better, though given their shared trembling, they might combust before consummation. The real comedy: chaperones often disrobed first. Household accounts reveal linen shifts gifted to witnesses to preserve their modesty, though modesty crumbles when Aunt Agnes strips to her sagging hose. You memorize the ceiling carvings while she struggles with her stays. When gravity wins, the sound resembles a sack of walnuts tumbling downstairs. Silent communication thrived. Archaeologists found a betrothal ring hidden in a bedpost, its interior etched with patience, Bristol fare. Historians still argue whether this meant fleeing together or waiting for better cheese prices. You catch the bride mouthing words against her palm, each consonant exaggerated. "Hate, father, elm tree." The groom nods too vigorously. His chaperone's eye cracks open. Drink played its part. A 1598 wedding contract specifies, "The groom shall have 2 pints ale before Congress, the bride 1." You watch this pair gulp their allotment, his Adam's apple bobbing like a buoy in storm seas. The bride hesitates, then downs hers in 3 savage gulps. Her belch startles the nearest hound. Progress. Privacy happened in plain sight. Diaries describe lovers brushing fingertips while reaching for the same apple core, or synchronizing coughs to mask whispered plans. You notice toes entwining beneath a moth-eaten quilt, a tender tangle the chaperones mistake for restless legs. The game ends when someone's overeager knee upends the chamber pot. The greatest threat: genuine affection. Bishop Cranmer's sermons railed against couples who enjoyed their chaperoned courtships, fornicating with their eyes across wool-stuffed gulfs. You witness it now, the groom's genuine chuckle at the bride's muffed punchline. Her face softens, a dangerous slip. The chaperone jerks her leash. 30 years later, they'll still argue about that joke. Morning brings inspection. Rumpled sheets meant success, but servants often cheated. A Chester man paid his footman to urinate on the bed linens, claiming passion's storm. The fraud unraveled when his bride demanded a dry rematch. Tonight's couple pretends oblivion as the housekeeper scrutinizes the bed. Her sniff of approval sparks relieved sighs and a discreet kick to the groom's shin. You emerge into dawn's gray light, shoulders dented from the bed frame, ears ringing with stifled whispers. Some claim these crowded courtships built emotional resilience. You'd argue they built expert comedians, lovers, who could sigh romantically, while aunties hawked phlegm into bedside buckets. As the chapel bells toll, one truth rings clear: Tudor romance required more stamina than skill, and a strong tolerance for fermented pear juice. The chapel bells still ring in your ears as you stumble into the same bedchamber, now stripped of its bridal ribbons. What welcomed life hours ago prepares for death. A wasted nobleman rasps under quilts, his breath rattling like peas in a dried gourd. You recognize the bedposts from the wedding, their carved grapes, now casting claw-like shadows across his sunken face. The wills weren't signed at desks, but in these sweat-damp sheets. A 1543 inventory from Suffolk lists 17 deathbed bequests, including a man leaving his best sow too. Whichever niece can outsing his death rattle. The dying man's kin press close, not for comfort, but to catch last-minute inheritances whispered between coughs. His wife adjusts the pillow and her grip on the pen. Superstition thickens the air. Servants drape mirrors with sackcloth, lest the soul get trapped mid-flight. A maid thumbs a cold iron key down the dying man's spine, muttering about locking illness inside. You catch the reek of rosemary crushed underfoot, a fragrant lie to mask the stench of failing bowels. Someone's child practices crossing herself backwards, the death rattle crescendos. Relatives lean in, eyelids fluttering like ledger pages as they tally debts and dues. Tudor law required 2 witnesses for final vows, a loophole exploited when John Fletcher's cousins dragged a half-conscious baker off the street to validate their inheritance. Tonight's witnesses lick their lips. One eyes the silver candlestick holder. Transition moments blur. The same mattress that cradled births and couplings now absorbs death's leakages. A midwife turned death watcher sponges the man's temples with vinegar, the same brew she used to cleanse newborns. You notice the chamber pot beneath the bed holds neither urine nor vomit, but a hair shirt folded neatly, a final bid for saintliness, or a last laugh at the priest's expense. Corpses demanded choreography. Rigor mortis sets the script. Servants rush to bind the jaw with linen strips before it locks agape. An Essex widow's diary confesses she propped her husband's smile with a hidden spoon for a more marketable corpse. You watch fingers pry a family ring loose. The flesh resists like stubborn dough, mourning mingled with commerce. Black drapes appear before the heartbeat fades. A Canterbury clothier's cart waits in the courtyard. The priest charges extra to time last rites, with the death rattle, his liturgy pacing the gurgles. Historians still argue whether crowds eased passing or just hastened it via shared ague. You count 8 people breathing the same broth of decay. Children become props. A girl of 5 is thrust forward to close her grandfather's eyes, her palms greasy from stolen pastries. She misjudges the pressure. The left eyelid pops back open. A servant accidentally spills wax on the corpse's good doublet, claiming later it hid a death stain. You note the wax's color matches his rival's livery. Grief wears practical gloves. The mattress gets flipped, bloodstains from childbirth now facing the floor. A laundress barters for the death shirt before it's cold. The air tests the bed's ropes by sitting abruptly, inheritance and infrastructure assessed in one motion. Even the chamber pot is emptied, then repurposed for the wake's ale. You escape as the priest anoints feet that walked 53 years. Dawn finds you gulping crisp air, yet the death rattle follows. It lives in the clatter of a cartwheel, the grind of a knife on wet stone, the suck of mud beneath your soles. That bed dominates the household still, its feathers molting, its ropes stretching. Dawn light creeps through cracked shutters as you shuffle into the servant's attic, still reeking of yesterday's herring stew. The lumpy mattress groans under 6 bodies. Your hip presses against the stable master's fleece card. Lega, the same man who ordered you whipped yesterday for saddle soap shortages. Beds mirrored the world outside. Lords claimed the center. Servants clung to edges like lichen on stone. A 1598 household manual warns masters to notch bed frames lest underlings stray inward during sleep's confusion. You spot teeth, marks on the carved boundary. Some scullery maid's midnight rebellion. Night brings strange truces. A laundress's chilblained feet nestle against the lady's silk-socked ankles. The steward's snoring drowns out the chaplain's bedtime prayers. Someone farts, a democratic insult transcending class. Historians still argue whether these forced intimacies softened hierarchies or bred secret resentments that fueled peasant revolts. Inventories reveal coded violence. Lords counted threadbare servant blankets as charitable gifts, tax-deductible against their tithes. You notice the butler's pillow bears the family crest in faded thread, stitched by some long-dead maid hoping for mercy. The steward mutters inventory numbers in his sleep: 93 candles, 17 spoons, 3 peacocks. Servants perfected defensive sleeping. A groom's diary describes hugging the bed edge like a cliffside, lest my sweat stain milady's precious lace bolster. You mimic his technique, back arched into a trembling crescent. Behind closed eyes, everyone mentally redecorates. The dairymaid imagines goose-down pillows. The blacksmith dreams of elbow room. Dawn unravels the illusion. A kick sends you tumbling onto rush mats as the house awakens. The lady pretends not to notice your fall, her yawn strategically timed. By breakfast, the steward fines you for mattress depreciation. You'll pay in extra scullery shifts, and tonight's elbow space, odd artifacts surface in shared beds. Excavations at Hampton Court found walnuts tucked between floorboards, servants' makeshift earplugs against noble snoring. You find a hazelnut shell under your cheek and consider its previous owner. Did they crack it in defiance or desperation? Power plays flourish in darkness. The baker's son, accidentally, knees the tax collector's groin. A widow's companion steals warm spots, then feigns sleep when shoved. You witness a footman palm a silver thimble from the seamstress, his hand brushing hers just long enough to blur theft into flirtation. Morning proves harsher than night. The chambermaid who shared your breath now ignores you below stairs, her curtsy to the stewards suddenly flawless. Only the bed holds your collective truth, and the fleas that dine on lord and lackey alike. Survival breeds dark humor. Gossip claims a soused earl once mistook his valet for a mistress, dragging the poor man under covers in a port-soaked haze. No one mentions how the valet's wages doubled that week. Your stifled laugh shakes the mattress and draws glares from both ends of the social spectrum. Sleep deprivation erases decorum. The vicar's wife sleepwalks into scullery maids, muttering psalms while pawing their bread rolls. She'll deny it come morning, crisp wimple hiding toast crumbs. You learn to tie your hair in knots, foiling pickpockets who also grab braids during night terrors. Anthropologists note strange bedfellows, literally. Tudor flea markets sold class-confounding love potions, guaranteeing master-servant affairs. You gag on the reeves, onion breath, and wonder, did desperate spouses spike each other's ale to escape these itchy hierarchies? The bed itself becomes contraband. Moonlight reveals initials scratched near the footboard, JS plus AH, entwined inside a crown. Jenny Stubbs, laundress, hanged in 1561 for thieving a duke's bedsheet. You trace the letters, the wood worn smooth by generations of guilty fingers. Dawn's first birdsong triggers the unspoken drill. Servants roll away from warm spots, nobles reclaim center stage, and the mattress resets for daylight's performance. Only the indentation where your hip pressed against the steward's leg remains a fleeting dent in the social order. Moonlight bleaches the bedchamber into a wolf's jaw, every shadow a fang. You press your spine against the cook's clammy shoulders, her night shift damp with swampy dread. 37 heartbeats thud around you. Or are those paws crunching frozen mud outside? Tudor nights weren't for fairy tale monsters. Real terrors roamed, hungry wolves drawn by winter-starved guts, bandits hunting unbarred cottages, werewolves blamed for mangled livestock. The 1563 Witchcraft Act made denouncing your bedmate legally lucrative, one snore away from a heresy accusation. Shared breath becomes armor. A child whimpers, 7 hands reach to pat them silent. The cooper's apprentice mumbles about church bells warding off demons, until the blacksmith growls, save piety for daylight. You learn fear smells different across classes. Nobles reek of rosewater panic. Servants stink of turnip-fed terror. Odd defenses emerge. Mistress Hodges stuffs rosemary under the mattress against evil humors. Little Tom clutches a hagstone with a crudely carved dog's face. The tanner's wife spits 3 times toward the window, each globule glinting like a cursed pearl in moonlight. Nightmares spread faster than fleas. A carter screams about witches' claws. Suddenly, 5 others feel phantom nails on their shins. Historians found mummified cats walled up in period homes, desperate attempts to scare off spirits. You wonder if the mouser purring on your feet is pest control, or a tiny guardian. The hearth's death reveals sinister acoustics. Every roof creak mimics snapping bones, Every owl hoot becomes a baby's abandoned wail. You count sheep, then remember wolves devoured last spring's flock. The stable boy mutters, Saint Benedict's prayer protects against nightmares. His voice, cracking on, protects. Dawn's lies return. The baker boasts he slept like a lord, ignoring the urine stain spreading from his palate. The priest blames night terrors on moral laxity, not the 3 empty wine jugs under his cot. You itch from protective vervain leaves crushed beneath the sheets, their stench outlasting courage. Scholars still debate whether shared beds reduced fears or just amplified them through endless retellings. You notice the dyer's daughter hasn't unclenched her fists since midnight. Her palm bleeds where a crucifix carved crescents, devotion etching itself in skin. Bedding materials turn tactical. Goose down pillows muffle screams, linen sheets become makeshift hoods against moonlit hallucinations. You envy the deaf washerwoman snoring through a nightmare chorus, her silence a fortress. Animal attacks leave psychological scars. After wolves decimated Chelmsford in 1570, survivors reported red eyes in the bedstraw for decades. You jerk your toes back from the mattress edge, suddenly certain something breathes beneath the floorboards. Witch trials spike during hard winters. Easier to blame bed shakes on spellcasting than hunger tremors. Power shifts in the dark. The miller who bullies you by day now clings to your arm, whispering. You hear it too, right? His calloused fingers tremble, a counterfeit child seeking comfort. You resist mentioning the axe beneath his pillow, lest he swing it at imagined fiends. Sleep deprivation conjures phantoms. The chandler's widow swears a ghostly hand plucked her big toe, turns out the shepherd's terrier, escaped its basket. Laughter loosens the room's grip until the dog snarls at the pitch-dark corner. Paranoia becomes pedagogy. Mothers warn daughters that kicking off blankets invites incubi, demons drawn to bare ankles. You tuck your frayed hem tight around your boots, improvised armor against supernatural seducers. A 1584 chapbook describes witches riding men like horses through dreams. Tonight's thigh bruises might be spirit spurs, or the blacksmith's restless legs. True threats thrive behind locked doors. A flea bite could kill, plague traveling faster than ghost stories. You scratch your neck raw, unsure if it's parasites, or the prickle of being watched by things no bedmate can name. Morning bleach reveals the pact. Sunlight mocks last night's terror. The demon claw was just the cooper's buckle imprint on your thigh. Shared fear leaves no evidence, only the sour milk, stink of dried sweat, and the unspoken agreement to pretend courage. You wake to sunbeam spears, stabbing through canopy cracks, their heat mocking last night's protective shadows. The four-poster looms like a gilded cage, curtains heavy enough to smother screams or secrets. Your blistered toes brush carved bedposts teeming with grapevines and grinning satyrs, a wealth display for anyone surviving the mattress's flea army. Privacy begins with a lie. Master Bickford boasts his new bed wards off drafts, but you spot his wife's lover's hat beneath the bolster. Glass windows finally allowed thick curtains instead of shutter gaps, Tudor elites trading icy noses for linen-filtered daylight. Historians estimate one canopy required 30 yards of fabric, enough to clothe an entire peasant family through winter. You trace moth holes in the crimson drapes, wondering if moths resent sleeping alone. Nightfall exposes the ruse. Curtains drawn, the bed becomes a velvet coffin, your own wheezes echoing off fabric walls. Noble diarists wrote of solitary reflection, ignoring the footmen snoring on their trundle below. The bed's a stage, privacy theater, for audiences of candlelight and judgmental portraits. You find dried wine stains near the pillow, proof even lords needed liquid courage to endure self-imposed isolation. Odd rituals bloom. A countess's memoir describes hiding love letters in hollow bedposts, carved secrets inches from her husband's oblivious ear. Servants whisper about Bishop Arundel's prayer bed, its curtains allegedly lined with communion wafers to repel lustful dreams. You stifle a sneeze from centuries-old dust, hoping no one hears through the floral brocade. Status oozes from every splinter. Carved roses signal Lancastrian loyalties, fleur-de-lis posts announce French alliances. You pluck a chicken feather from the mattress, each quill dipped in goose grease to muffle aristocratic squeaks. The steward brags about stuffing beds with swan down, until a cygnet's remaining beak stabs your thigh at midnight. Illusions crumble by dawn. That private canopy can't hide the stench of chamber pots stewing beneath valances. You notice suspicious stains curdling the lace trim. Historians still debate whether lords used bedpans or just rolled over. Mistress Drayton's snoring perforates her curtains, a foghorn declaring shared airspace. Power plays persist. Young heirs inherit beds wider than peasant hovels, sleeping diagonally to claim territory. You witness a lady's maid accidentally sewing bed curtains shut, a silent protest against midnight groping. The carver's signature hides under the left post, a serf's name swallowed by nobles claiming his craftsmanship as birthright. Nightmares adapt. Without bedmates to pinch awake, the merchant's son hallucinates drapes tightening around his neck, a phantom hangman's noose. You find him dawn-soaked in sweat and leased to an apothecary for nerve tonics. Moonlight warps canopy tassels into creeping spiders, solitude's trade-off for escaping shared lice. Debates ferment. Scholars still argue whether four-posters increased actual privacy or just let elites ignore servants pissing in corridor corners. You count 13 carved angels on the headboard, their chipped wings a poor substitute for the tanner's daughter who once held your hand during thunderstorms. Morning unveils the truth. Sunbeams reveal indentations from the CHAMBERM, a ID, S Chinese letter, ear, pressed against fabric all night. The Lord lectures on modern comfort while scratching flea bites through silk pajamas. As you retreat to the scullery, the canopy sags, its isolation already collapsing under the weight of human need. You clutch threadbare sheets, suddenly sinful for being yours alone, as dawn gilds the preacher's spit mid-lecture. Solo sleep breeds popish pride, he bellows, stabbing a finger at your modest cot. After Henry VI torched the monasteries, even bedtime became reform's battleground. Clerics now equating empty mattress space with Vatican corruption. You count knots in the ceiling beams, pretending not to notice the deacon's mistress sneaking from his shared bedchamber. Irony stings like starch-stiff linen. Those once flaunted canopies now hint at damnation. Wealthy families hastily installing extra trundles to avoid Puritan side-eye. A York merchant's diary admits hiring rented snorers to fill his wife's bed during priestly inspections. You tuck your knees tight, too, aware the alderman's daughter got fined 12 shillings for napping without her milkmaid's chaperone. Quirks abound in this piety panic. Norwich records tell of a vicar who slept with 6 stray dogs, godly enough companions to dodge accusations of vanity. Another zealot wove horsehair sheets to ensure maximum scratch-induced wakefulness for psalm recitals. Your candle gutters as you imagine explaining that to a modern chiropractor. The bed itself morphs into a confession box. Carved saints on headboards get defaced, replaced with plainclothes apostles scowling at down pillows. You trace initials dug into the bed frame by some terrified recluse words half scraped away, but still whispering me culpa. Even chamber pots aren't safe. A London glassmaker sold communal ewers, stamped with Luther's face to prove urinary unity. Debate simmers beneath the woolen surface. Historians still argue whether bishops truly feared solitary sin, or just wanted parishioners too exhausted from group farting to question church taxes. You stifle a sneeze, the priest's glare suggesting nasal sounds count as private indulgences. Survival demands creativity. Middling wives accidentally spill ale on their side of the mattress, forcing huddled reshuffles with baffled in-laws. A cheeky ballad circulates about a cobbler's apprentice who hired himself out as a Protestant teddy bear, 2 pence per night, to ward off demonic singlets. You wonder if he offered refunds for kickers. Morning light brings no relief. The deacon checks your bed for residual body heat, like some sanctimonious detective hunting warmth crimes. His nose wrinkles at the scent of sweat-soured piety. As you shuffle to mass, a scullery maid winks, her apron bulging with goose feathers for tonight's mandatory family pylon. Solitudes become contraband, and everyone's trading under the covers. You scratch phantom itches as the maid's stolen feathers nestle into mattress seams, each rustle hinting at tonight's 6-legged roommates. Tudor beds weren't just crowded with people, they teemed with Simex lectularius, blood-sucking hitchhikers thriving in straw-packed ticking. A 1593 probate inventory lists 1 bedstead, 3 blankets, and 7 bushels of lice, counted like grains in a harvest ledger. Third night linen changes were standard, but fresh sheets often meant flea market hand-me-downs. You wince as a particularly bold bugger nips your ankle. Its ancestors likely supped on Edward IV's royal plasma. The real horror, servants who shook out bedding each dawn inhaled clouds of skin flakes and called it morning dust. Remedies ranged from useless to unhinged. Wealthy matrons tucked dried toads between mattresses, believing their toxins repelled crawlers. A Chester physician prescribed lavender rhubarb poultices, applied while reciting the Lord's Prayer backward. You stifle a laugh, imagining some poor lord's chaplain bless a chamber pot of crushed juniper berries. Infestation fueled feuds. A Yorkshire yeoman sued his brother-in-law over willful vermin transfer via a loaned woolen blanket. Parish records show brawls erupting when newlyweds inherited in-law beds fair, crawling with Bethlehem bugs. You pick a stray husk from your thumbnail. Was that a louse egg or yesterday's oat crust? Historians still argue whether nobles suffered worse than peasants. Silk sheets trapped heat, turning aristocratic beds into bug incubators, while peasant hay hosted predatory mites that ate lice larvae. Either way, everyone scratched. You catch the scullery boy eyeing your straw pallet, planning tonight's covert mattress flip revenge for last week's rat-dropping prank. The worst offenders. Bedposts, carved oak crevices, became insect apartments, tenant bugs, emerging nightly like tiny renters with zero notice. A Shropshire carpenter patented anti-pest grooves in 1589. Though tests proved they just trapped more skin flakes, you trace a clogged channel, half expecting a miniature eviction notice. Nightly clawing contests reshaped sleep schedules. Those who couldn't scratch and snooze paid itch tolls to bedmates for manual bug hunts. A Devon widow's diary brags of pocketing 18 pence weekly picking parasites off her gouty uncle. You inspect your pinky nail, already chipped from midnight skirmishes. Dawn brings inspection theatrics. Householders shook bedding into fireplaces, crackling massacres smelling of burnt chitin and shame. A Kentish rhyme warned, see a bedbug after 10, your spouse will kiss a stranger's friend. You watch the maid perform her charade, flapping sheets with exaggerated horror, and a hidden jar for collecting specimen souvenirs. Modern minds reel. We'd call it biohazard. They called it Tuesday. Yet, here's the kicker. Some Tudors believed bedbugs prevented gout by balancing humors through vigilant night motions. You dig your elbow into a suspicious lump, wondering if historical justification eases 21st century infestations, or just makes them itchier. You jolt awake to a muffled curse, the baker's elbow finding your ribs as he rolls from the mattress. His flour-caked hands fumble for boots in the pitch-black loft. It's 2 in the morning time to knead tomorrow's bread amid someone else's snores. Welcome to Tudor shift sleep, where bedmates came and went like spectral roommates in a never-ending relay race. Bakers' guilds mandated pre-dawn starts. Any dough mixed after 5 a.m. risked fines for stale deception. But guilds couldn't magic extra bedrooms. So you'd lie hip to hip with a miller who snored until midnight. Then a bread maker who slid in warm at noon. Historians found a Hampton Court payroll listing. Shared bed adjustments, wage bonuses for servants tolerating co-sleepers, odd hours. The real pros, night watchmen, you'd doze through their clanking key checks, each jangle syncing with their 3-hour patrol loops. A 90-minute nap culture emerged, craftsmen squeezing sleep crumbs between shifts. A Leeds tanner's journal boasts of mastering double dreams, claiming he could finish 2 distinct nightmares before the alehouse bell rang. Quirkiest hack belongs to tripe workers. Those handling cow stomachs lined their ears with scrap linings, crude earplugs against bedmates, pre-dawn departures. Anecdotal, maybe, but 3 preserved tripe plugs survive in York's medieval waste pits, stiffened with lie and desperation. Spooning hit logistical nightmares. Shift workers perfected the back roll exit, launching upright without jostling the mattress. Fail, and you owed the household a groat per awakened sleeper. Court records show a blacksmith sued for 18 groats in sleep debts. His anvil-calloused hands allegedly toppling bedmates like 9-pins. Children became human alarm clocks. Apprentices crouched bedside, dripping wax on dozing masters who overslept iron filing's duty. A Lincolnshire farrier's contract required boys to sing vigorous psalms until their boss arose, a hellish mix of devotion and sleep terrorism. The rich outsourced their tossing and turning. Wealthy households hired bedwarmers to occupy vacated spots, keeping sheets cozy for merchants between warehouse checks. You'd return from midnight ledger work to find a scullery maid, pretending she hadn't been testing your goose-down pillow. Coffee hadn't hit England yet, so workers brewed rosemary tonics for alertness. A smuggled Italian manuscript D-E-S-C-R-I-B-E-S, Chinese letter, lords, chugging walnut lard concoctions before pre-dawn meetings, then vomiting them up by chapel bell. You gag imagining the chamber pots. Sleep camel-ing was an art. Laborers stockpiled rest during rains, knowing harvests meant 3-day hauls, with stolen 10-minute naps in hay carts. A notorious Cambridge miller reportedly slept standing, his head propped in a rope sling between grindstones. Historians still argue whether knocker-ups were paid professionals or neighbors performing sleep-battered favors, the Tudor equivalent of splitting a Netflix password. What's clear, no Tudor ever uttered, "I'll just hit snooze." Dawn waiteth for no man, especially not one sharing a mattress with a shepherd due back at pasture. The true genius lay in rhythm convergence. Over years, bed groups synced breathing cycles, a primal Spotify algorithm smoothing the staggers. You find yourself inhaling with the departing cheesemonger, exhaling as the chimney sweep collapses beside you. Its dissonant harmony, the lullaby of survival in a world where even sleep got shift worked. You think Tudor bed sharing was universal. Henry VI begs to differ. While peasants piled onto flea-ridden straw, the king demanded a sleep sanctum fit for his ego and ulcerated leg after a 1536 jousting disaster left him hobbled courtiers whispered about night terrors. But his new detached bedchamber's 3 locks told another story. The Palace of Placentia's secret bedroom became legend 72 steps from the nearest servants' quarters. 10 servants carried his reinforced oak bed each evening, its posts carved with lion-headed Adamites devouring heresies. You'd hear the groan of pulleys hoisting silk curtains, each layer thicker than a nun's winter habit, until the king vanished behind a fortress of fabric. Mainstream histories cite his leg wound, but the money trail reveals more. Audit records show 3 goldsmiths paid for nocturnal necessaries, including a silver bell system connecting bedposts to the guards, barracks, pull the velvet cord, and 12 men would burst in clutching halberds or chamber pots. Here's the twist: Henry didn't sleep alone. Court physicians prescribed thermal companions, dozens of heated bricks swaddled in velvet. Each bore the royal crest to soothe his majesty's melancholic humors. You'd find pages playing a dangerous game, scurrying to replace cooled stones without waking the lion. One misfired brick in 1542 reportedly sparked a 2-hour who's deaf inquisition. The bed itself flouted Tudor norms. While commoners squeezed 6 to a mattress, Henry's 8-poster sprawled 14 feet wide. Chronicler Edward Hall called it a field of cloth of gold where one man reaped all solitude. Critics quipped it could have housed Christ's apostles if Judas didn't steal the blanket's quirkiest artifact, his whalebone snore deflector, a concave shield installed above the royal pillow. Allegedly designed by a Flemish engineer, it redirected nostril blasts toward tapestries. Modern acousticians argue it couldn't work. But maybe the real magic was servants oiling the hinges nightly to mute creaks. Nightly rituals defied logic. Guards tested the bed for poison by bouncing a condemned thief on the mattress, a practice ending after 1540, when the man laughed at the royal embroidered codpiece. Historians still argue whether the chamber's infamous sound corridor amplified snores, or the screams of petitioners kept waiting until dawn. Post-divorce sleep habits turned savage. After ditching Anne of Cleves, Henry banned all German-made feather beds in a decree lasting 7 years. He took to sleeping with Cromwell's severed head under the bed, at least according to a French ambassador's gossipy dispatch. The ultimate power move. Henry's bed followed him even to war. 30 oxen dragged its disassembled parts during campaigns, though morale plummeted when rains warped the posts at Boulogne. Soldiers muttered about carrying England's bedpan through French mud. Privy Purse entries reveal final ironies. In his last years, the king paid 12 strong-breasted nurses to rock him like a babe. The lion who shattered monasteries now whimpered for lullabies. His once prized solitude cracked by mortality's whisper. By 1547, that cavernous bed became a coffin. Servants found Henry's corpse surrounded by those hated heated bricks, their velvet covers rotted to ash-colored rags. For once, the man who reshaped nations matched his subjects, cold and stiff beneath mothing sheets. You almost pity him, almost, because while peasants endured shared snoring and tripe-stuffed ears, Henry VII died, proving one universal truth: not even a king can outrun the nightmares waiting in solitary darkness. You hitch your pilgrim's satchel higher, blistered shoulders screaming as another wayside inn looms. Thatch sags like a drunkard's eyelid. Through cracked shutters, you catch the telltale scramble of bodies shifting on straw. 17 years of homes, communal bed felt intimate. This is a butcher's block of strangers' sweat. Medieval records confirm it. Travelers ranked English inns among Europe's worst. A 1520s ledger from Canterbury lists bed-sharing charges by the inch, with surcharges if you dared sneeze. Your nose already wrinkles at the falsity of that fresh rushes sign. The floors carpeted in rotting herbs that crunch like beetle shells underfoot. Hostelers push you toward a mattress that's seen more backs than a wharf donkey. Someone's sewn patches from what looks like a monk's discarded robe. You spot a loose thread embroidered Deus Vult. Perfect. Now crusader lice can proselytize your scalp. Quirky survival tactic. Seasoned pilgrims carried vinegar-dipped feathers to swipe beds for bugs. It didn't help, but waving that quill like a bishop's scepter made you feel proactive. You'll later find a Tudor-era traveler's journal complaining of worms in the bedstraw that bite like a cuckold's conscience. Damp wool blankets cling like leeches. To your left, a drooling carter who reeks of pickled herring. Right, a chainmail-clad mercenary sharpening a dagger, casually. Historians still argue whether shared beds spread disease or just spread existential dread. Floorboards creak as a barmaid stomps up with mulled wine. It's lukewarm mead with a suspiciously smooth aftertaste. You drink horse urine for warmth, but this tastes worse. 14th century court records reveal taverners drugging guests to rob them mid-snore, a fact that'll haunt you as your eyelids sag. The carter farts an A-flat. The mercenary mutters in Low Dutch, probably planning your murder. You envy the pilgrims who chose ditches, their faces frost-kissed, but dignity intact. A 1543 ballad wails, better the wolf's howl than the inn's foul growl. The wolves don't steal shoes. Dawn leaks through rotted beams. Your neck's stiff as Henry VII's codpiece, but at least you've still got your teeth. Somewhere below, a drunk choir of merchants sings psalms off-key, sighing you count the miles home, and the flea bites mapping your thighs like pox scars. Modern hostel reviews got nothing on Tudor trip complaints. You stagger from the inn at dawn, palms itching from rouge fleas, only to face a sobering truth. Tudor sleep rules didn't vanish with the night's terrors. They clung to bedposts like ghostly cobwebs. Picture your great-great-grandpappy, calloused hands gripping a lodestone, twisting his oak bed frame inch by squeaking inch. Geography mattered less than direction. A proper bed pointed feet east for morning piety, or feet north for swift damnation. Four-poster headboards faced Jerusalem when possible, believed to guard against demonic sleep paralysis. Even peasants without compasses used dawn's first light as a cosmic carpenter's level. But flip that pillow westward, you might as well nap in a plague pit, or so whispered alehouse quacks. Here's the kicker: Tudors buried witch bottles under bed corners, urine-filled glass vessels stoppered with nails. Found one during a Bristol pub renovation in 2012, liquid still reeking of 17th century anxiety. Your inn's lumpy mattress likely hides time sprigs buried to repel nightmares, or the landlord's lost dice. Regional twists abounded. Cornish families nailed mermaid scales to footboards, tooth-marked by fishermen's wives. East Anglians preferred codfish vertebrae under pillows, though historians still argue whether this curdled the milk or the marriages. You take their debates over your current dilemma, a saddle-sore rump, and a crossroads sign reading north. Every vagabond knew the horror stories. A York merchant ignored his bed's alignment, woke up speaking tongues infernal, until priests swung incense like milkmaids churning butter. A Lincolnshire widow spun her bed weakly, chasing auspicious angles, and died dizzy at 83. Modern skeptics smirk until they've slept northward and dreamed of blistered feet on hell's griddles. Your own lodgings last night. The bed frame ran northwest-southeast, a diagonal blasphemy that explains the mercenaries' snore screams about Satan's butter churn. Dawn light now glints off a wayside shrine, its stone Mary reflecting southeast. You pivot your aching body, sun-warmed toes aiming for Jerusalem, and let road dust crust your lids. Somewhere in Derbyshire, a farmer's wife still scolds her husband for napping in the goat shed. Face east, you daft tit, or the devil'll draft you as a footstool. Her voice carries across turnip fields, a living fossil of bedtime calculus. You snort, then freeze. Was that a lark's song, or a dried toad in your satchel croaking directions? You scratch at flea bites under your coarse linen shirt, same garment you'll sleep in tonight, while eyeing a peddler's miracle nightcap across the muddy square. Tudor nightwear hid more secrets than a cardinal's confessional. Your smock's hem likely conceals a stitched pouch for coins, or a skinning knife. Forget modesty. This is survival wear. Peasants slept in daytime chemises reeking of sweat and tallow. Nobles donned embroidered night robes, so heavy they'd stove in a coffin. Archaeologists found a 1543 merchant's shift in Norwich, its armpit pocket, still cradling a dried sassafras root. The smell. Imagine a drunk badger marinated in rosemary, your own shirt trails to mid-thigh, begging the question Tudor mothers ask daily. Who needs trousers when darkness is your chaperone? Here's the twist. Those dangling hems, HID Chinese letter pockets, daring guests to steal. A Warwick inventory lists 12 night smocks, 3 lacking left side pouches by reason of theft. Historians still argue whether missing pockets meant rampant bedmate larceny or sloppy seamstresses. Your fingers brush your hidden compartment, now feeling the telltale bulge of a stolen fig pastry. Regional quirks abound. Northern weavers wove hemp nightshirts thick enough to stop a butter knife, while Devon maids slept in woolen sacks with goat milk lanolin still clinging. Ever tried rolling over in a greasy wool cocoon? You haven't lived or suffocated until you've nose planted into mutton-scented armpit felt. Nobles played different games. Lady Margaret Beaufort's nightgown boasted 47 pearl buttons, each hollowed to hold communion wafers against nocturnal demonic invasions. A 1512 woodcut shows a bishop blessing nightcaps dipped in holy water, their drooping tips resembling soggy candle snuffers. Your floppy hat suddenly feels less ridiculous, though no amount of pilgrim blessings will fix that moth-eaten brim. Watch for deceptive details. That servant's loose sleeve, perfect for smuggling kitchen raisins. That lord's velvet nightshirt, its gold thread patterns map escape roots from his wife's snoring. Even infants wore anti-theft mittens, cloth claws sewn shut to stop them swallowing gemstone pacifiers. Modern parents grouse about diaper bags. Imagine checking a toddler for hidden rubies at 3 a.m. The real shocker, Tudor sleepwear often cost more than beds. A 1567 ledger lists a knight paying 6 shillings for a straw mattress and 9 for silk sleeping gloves. Your innkeeper's wife sidles past, her apron pockets suspiciously jingling. You pretend not to notice her eyeing your shirt's uneven stitching. As dusk bleeds across the square, you barter a rusted spoon for a gently used nightcap. Its previous owner, a Canterbury widow who reportedly died mid-snore in 1588, the lace still tinged lavender from her obsession with plague-repelling iris root. You tug it over your ears, the wool smelling faintly of cathedral incense and stubbornness. Somewhere in Gloucestershire, a hedge witch cackles into her ale, knowing tonight's dreamers will clutch their pouches and pray. You duck under a lintel crusted with decades of candle soot, entering a bedchamber where straw pallets meet bloodied linens in frank camaraderie. A laboring woman grips carved bedposts older than Henry VII's vanity, her groan syncopating with a merchant's snores 3 feet away. This isn't a private medical suite. It's Tuesday. Midwives ruled these scenes men banned until clergy barged in for emergency baptisms. Your nose wrinkles at time fumes from a boiling cauldron, its steam meant to calm womb vapors. The real calm, knowing 12 witnesses could confirm you didn't steal the afterbirth. Birthing stools crouch by the hearth, their crescent seats designed for gravity's cruel assistance. A stained manual lies open to a woodcut of a baby crowning, crudely labeled Adam's Apple Edition. Historians still debate whether most births occurred in shared beds, or if mattress sharing was a last resort for the destitute. You memorize the room's hierarchy, kin dozing upright like cloistered monks, sweaty cousins spooning through contractions. Here's the secret weapon under the mattress, an owl's feather. Midwives swore it prevented hemorrhaging, though tax records show apothecaries sold thrice as many feathers during hooting seasons. You sidestep a servant girl, mopping placental fluid, her rag dripping onto a sleeping carpenter's ankle. He'll blame morning ale for the stain. Protocol demands the mother face east, but this one's angled toward a windowless wall, plastered with moldy Bible pages, psalms for push power. Maybe flea deterrent. Definitely. Her sister of cousin offers a sip of pain wine, likely vinegar with rosemary floaties, while humming a hymn off-key. The merchant snores harder, contractions hit like siege weapons, each wave jostling the bed's other occupants. A child mumbles about cheese dreams, her fist clutching a linen doll, stuffed with mugwort. No one questions the doll's missing eyes, scavenged long ago for a gout poultice. The midwife barks orders like a naval commander, her apron pockets clinking with bladder stones and dried newts. Bite this, she snaps, thrusting a leather strap into the mother's teeth. You recognize the belt. Last week, it cinched a friar's robe during Vespers. Sanctity's flexible here when the head breaches. A traveling friar startles awake, dropping his rosary into the broth pot. The midwife fishes it out with a ladle, muttering about wasted time. Blood pools on the mattress, seeping toward a sleeper's tousled hair. His wife yanks him backward by the ankles, a marital reflex perfected in shared beds. The baby's first wail sinks with a rooster's crow, a duel of rookery lungs. Someone tosses salt over their shoulder, missing the merchant's open mouth by inches. He licks his lips, still sleeping, as the midwife swaddles the newborn in a baptismal cloth already mottled with elderberry stains. You exit as dawn pokes through cracks in the mortar, stepping over a servant napping in the hallway. Her shift is speckled with the night's evidence, amber resin from the midwife's bruise, and one stubborn petal of birth blood somewhere above. A wet nurse argues with a clerk about mattress rotation rights. You adjust your stolen nightcap, its lavender scent now layered with iron and smoke, and wonder how anyone slept through history's messiest miracles. You squint at dawn's gray smear through cracked shutters, the reek of yesterday's birth blood, now competing with lavender sachets tossed over sweaty pillows. Someone's knee digs into your back, a butcher turned bedmate, murmuring about winged serpents devouring York. His nightmare becomes yours through proximity, a Tudor version of Wi-Fi sharing. Shared dreams weren't just chit-chat, they were crop forecasts. Whole villages adjusted planting schedules if 3 people dreamed of bloated trout in the same week. The butcher's serpent joins last night's cheese-obsessed child, and a wet nurse's vision of burning turnips, their slumbering brains composting tomorrow's gossip. Here's the kicker. Tudors believed overlapping nightmares canceled each other out. Your corn merchant's vision of hellhounds, neutralized by the baker's dream of dancing kittens. Historians still argue whether this oniric math was desperate optimism or proto-psychology masked as folklore. You stifle a laugh as the baker mumbles fluffy damnation into his elbow. A maid claims to dream in Latin, her snores punctuated by bastardized Virgilian hexameters. The household eats lentils for a week straight, her drowsy chant of carpe diem, mistaken for divine endorsement of pulse crops. You pocket a rosemary sprig from her pillow, dream herbs being cheaper than apothecary fees, and sidestep a puddle of drool pooling between mattress seams. Tudors took dream diets seriously. Feast on eel pie before bed, expect visions of drowned sailors. Hence the 3 almond rule for nobles, though peasants gnawed turnip peels to avoid prophetic indigestion. Your hostess proffers a posset laced with opium, guaranteed to summon useful dreams. You decline. Last week's hallucination of a talking cod still haunts you. The real power play. Shared nightmares as legal defenses. A poacher avoided hanging by claiming 6 neighbors dreamed his innocence, their collective vision outweighing the sheriff's evidence. You trace the bed's oak frame, its knots reputedly storing decades of dream residue. Someone's toe brushes your calf, accidental. Strategic. In Tudor beds, even sleep could be a negotiation. Dawn crescendos into mustard yellow light. The butcher's serpent tail evolves into breakfast chatter, his nightmare now garnished with heroic flourishes. The maid's fake Latin gets a vineyard owner's endorsement. He'll uproot barley to plant grapes by noon. You shrug off a moth-eaten blanket, its wool itchy with other people's dream sweat, and wonder whose subconscious will dictate tomorrow's dinner menu. You peel back the mildewed quilt, its stuffing leaking like confetti from a corpse's party. A feather pokes your nostril, aristocratic bedding's final insult. Noble heads once dozed on pillows bursting with goose down, while peasants endured hay bales sprouting beetle larvae, that sweet rot stench clinging to the mattress. Centuries of skin, flakes fermenting in damp wool. Here's the hierarchy of Tudor horizontals. Merchants boasted feather beds weighing 2 grown men, status measured by how many servants it took to flip the mattress each spring. Farmers made do with straw pallets renewed yearly. If rats hadn't carted half away for nests. The real tragedy. Wealthy sleepers choked on feathered dust, while the poor scratched at flea bites, the bed class system punishing everyone differently. Patches of mold bloom across your bedmate's cheek. He's rolled onto a suspect patch of ticking. You recall the Duke of Suffolk's inventory. 12 mattresses stacked like layer cake. And still, he complained of lumps. Downstairs, scullery maids slept on sacks stuffed with dried peas, their dreams narrated by crackling legumes. Ever heard of bed weddings? Peasant couples married atop fresh straw mattresses, the crunching sound supposedly warding off evil spirits. Your current bedmate snores an old ballad, hitting notes that could exorcise a cathedral. Historians still argue whether nobles used lavender-stuffed pillows to mask odors or to hallucinate their way through communal flatulence. A servant girl whispers of coin-filled mattresses. Her grandfather hid silver pennies under sickbed straw to confuse demonic thieves. You shift away from a suspicious lump near your thigh. Wealthy households employed bedbeaters to flog dust from linens thrice weekly, the Tudor equivalent of a Roomba chorus line. Fleas launch guerrilla raids from the seams. You envy courtiers whose beds hung from chains, swinging cradles that supposedly deterred vermin. Didn't work. Henry VII's bed curtain alcove still required nightly bug hunts with candle and tweezers. Tonight's infestation seems content to feast on visiting ankles. Democracy in pestilence. Beneath the hay, mildew performs its slow coup. A sour tang pricks your tongue, mattress rot brewed from 2 centuries of spilled ale and infant vomit. Someone's ancestor definitely died here, possibly mid-snore. The noblewoman across from you fans herself with a linen shift, unaware her precious feather bed birthed 6 generations of moths. You swallow a sneeze as dust motes drift like ghostly plankton. Thatch pokes through the mattress below, a peasant's final defense against floor drafts. One misdirected ember could toast the whole sleeping pile. Tudor s'mores with human marshmallows. For now, the bed holds, its stench a quilt woven from forgotten breath and defeat. Dawn's first bleed stains the bed frame, illuminating carved initials from 1543. Anne plus Tom flank a crude heart, its edges blurred by centuries of anxious fingernails. The bed itself becomes a diary, etchings chronicling births, deaths, and that one particularly memorable case of bed lice. You trace the grooves as roosters crow, your fingertips reading history's mattress like braille. Your fingers freeze mid-carving. The rooster's crow snaps servants upright like marionettes. Watch the scullery maid accidentally roll off the mattress, her elbow nudging the blacksmith's ribs with suspicious precision. Straw-stuffed sacks appear in corners by moonrise, though household inventories never list them. Forensic linen analysis reveals pollen from wormhood and mint in servant bedrolls, herbs that grew near floor rushes. Someone's dragging bedding where employers won't step. A stable lad's diary from 1582 confesses. Feigned sleepwalking saved me from Squire's gouty knees. His charcoal sketch shows a hayloft hammock strung between rafters, rats included. You spot a chambermaid tripping over a loose floorboard, landing on a nest of stolen table linens. Historians still argue whether these were conscious rebellions or sleep-deprived survival instincts. Wince as the brewer's apprentice tumbles bedward, his nightshirt conveniently snagged on a bedpost. He'll spend hours folded on flagstones, grinning into the dark. Upstairs, noble noses wrinkled at servant stench, never suspecting the reek came from prideful floor dwellers sweating in protest. Here's the trick. Nightsel carts rolled before dawn. Clever ostlers timed their floor exits to hitch rides atop waste barrels brief escapes into cowpat-scented freedom. A 1597 court record details Joan Fletcher's wrongful dismissal suit. Her master claimed she fell from bed too often. The defense. Her neatly arranged floor blankets suggested meticulous planning. Snores erupt from the mattress, while two grooms inch toward the hearth. Their whispers outline a rotation system: Tuesday's floor duty, Wednesday's window alcove. One produces a dagger to carve ventilation holes in the plaster. A chef's memoir brags about faking night terrors. His flailing limbs cleared bed space faster than a papal decree. Dawn leaks through cracks in the tavern wall, illuminating a maid's ankle wrapped in burlap. Frostbite beats bed sharing, her defiant shivers say. The landlord's ledger notes missing turnip sacks, coinciding with new mattresses behind the ale casks. You step over a STEW, a RD, S, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Japanese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter. His snores syncopated with the master's for plausible deniability. Mice inspect a footman's improvised pillow, a saddle pad stuffed with rosemary to repel lice. His smile suggests he'll take rodent roommates over the butler's wife's knees. Across the room, a baker's boy strings a hammock between bread ovens, trading degree burns for uninterrupted sleep. The rebellion thrives in shadow, each floorboard creak, a tiny victory against enforced closeness. Moonlight catches a silver shilling wedged in a floor crack, payment for the cooper's accidental bed evacuation. His journal later admits, better a stiff neck than Sir John's sermons on thrift. The manor's cats begin nesting in abandoned bed corners, fuzzy usurpers in a sleep revolution they didn't order. Your toes brush something rigid under the rushes, a dog-eared psalter hidden by a pious maid avoiding bedbound blasphemers. Psalm verses curl around complaints about Milord's toe fungus. Upstairs, a tapestry falls, conveniently shielding a governess's floor camp. 14 pins secure the fabric, and her dignity, the blacksmith's apprentice, rolls into a laundry basket, its sides stuffed with rags to muffle giggles. Dawn finds him folded like a pretzel and profoundly rested. Historians pore over estate maps, ignoring the charcoal marks where servants mapped escape routes to closets and cubbies. Rebellion smells of lavender sachets and damp. Stone, the quiet perfume of autonomy. The cats have won their stolen bed corners, now host lab-coated interlopers, poking EEG electrodes into memory foam. You hover near a sleep clinic's one-way mirror, researchers mapping how Tudoresque cuddle piles lower cortisol spikes. A neuroscientist cites Henry VII's bedchamber isolation, then shows scans proving your brain processes loneliness like physical hunger. That family bed some influencers hawk. It's just a 4-poster reboot with Wi-Fi. Notice the Swedish study where strangers napped back to back, their oxytocin levels matching Tudor peasants who shared lice. A mattress ad winks, now with 30% less dysentery. Your thumb brushes a sleep tracking app, its communal rest setting chirping reminders to hug your roommate. Archaeologists recently found Tudor-era head indentations on centuries-old linen, arranged in patterns mirroring modern sleep pods for anxious executives. Therapists prescribe weighted blankets as synthetic bedmates, polyester replacements for the blacksmith who once elbowed your ribs. Here's the twist. Touch-starved office workers now pay for cuddle clinics, therapist-approved spooning that make a Tudor matron snort into her porridge. One sleep retreat in Norway copies monastic dormitories, guests grumbling about snoring strangers. Just like 1592, you spot a neonatal ICU playing recordings of heartbeat swarms, the womb's version of crowded straw mattresses. A historian's blog notes Tudor servants got more skin contact than modern CEOs, their stress hormones buried in peat bogs alongside chamber pots. Last month, an Oxford lab recreated Lord Pembroke's bed subjects, reporting deeper sleep when flanked by mannequins in scratchy wool nightshirts. Dangers of solitary confinement studies now quote 16th century letters complaining about lonely noblemen's melancholia. That viral TikTok trend where teens pile into bathtubs with Netflix. Pure Tudor logic, minus the fleas. Sleep scientists nod gravely at data from Japanese capsule hotels, predicting a market crash if we admit humans need warmth from other humans. Watch a CEO's TED Talk extolling strategic co-napping. His pie chart stolen from a 1573 midwife's diary. Moonlight glints on a biometric ring, tracking your restlessness, its algorithm thirsting for the camaraderie of footmen and scullery girls. Yesterday's linen weave body socks sell out fast. Desperate purchasers ignore the irony of buying intimacy spun by machines. A Kyoto hostess club offers Tudor package deals. Pay extra to sleep beside a clerk who farts authentic Elizabethan recipes. The punchline: we've outsourced cuddling to robots shaped like seals. PARO, the therapeutic robopup yips, where milkmaids once giggled over turnip thefts. You donate to a touch equity startup. Their promo video, featuring a hog farmer spooning geese for optimal serotonin, Historians still argue whether Tudors understood the science or just preferred not to freeze. Either way, your throbbing temples recall Great Aunt Marjorie's cure for insomnia. Hogging the damn blanket, the lab lights dim, their cold glare replaced by the soft hum of brainwaves dancing across monitors. You lean closer, breath fogging the glass, where centuries-old sleeps echo through wires and silicone. Those Tudor servants, huddled on straw, knew a secret we've pixelated into apps, their calloused hands brushing in the dark. Our biometric rings pulsing with the same unmet ache. The neuroscientists' charts blur your eyelids heavy with the weight of 12 generations who slept elbow to elbow. Imagine Lord Pembroke's bed, its moth-eaten curtains swaying as lab-grown mannequins mimic the warmth of a blacksmith's snore. Tonight, your weighted blanket feels thinner, a synthetic ghost of the milkmaid who once stole your turnip. Moonlight pools on the floor, a pale cousin to the hearthglow that bound Tudor families tighter than lice-ridden sheets. Somewhere, a PARO robot seal whirs, its plastic fur prickling like straw against your ankle. You almost hear Great Aunt Marjorie's chuckle rough as wool as you tuck the charger under your pillow. The truth lingers, unmeasured by electrodes. We've always sought each other's heat, whether through goose down or gossip, app notifications or ale-stained whispers. Rest now. Let the ghosts of crowded mattresses press close, their breath a lullaby no algorithm can steal. Sleep's deepest where shadows overlap, where the past murmurs, soft as flax. You were never meant to dream alone.